It doesn't matter how the ball goes through, every goal is worth 6 points, as we know, but is there a more efficient way to score than others? Can we use the Big Six scoring metrics in order to determine who the most efficient scorers in the AFL are? Well, I believe we can. And the correlation to the last 2 years of finals says that 2 round 10 opponents are actually the best scoring and defending teams in the league. Let's go. So whilst, yes, we are going to talk about every club for the majority of this video and how they're going, it's going to be really interesting at the end of this video in order to analyze of the 6 main metrics, which 3 are fundamentally most important to winning finals, because being able to do something in the regular season versus translating that into a final series is going to be key. The premiership team doesn't necessarily have to be the best team in the competition come the end of the season. They have to be the best one during finals. Brisbane, of course, proving that by not being a top 4 team last year, but dominating in the final series, and yes, dominating in terms of the comeback against the Giants as well. So what are these Big Six scoring metrics? Well, they include kick-ins, stoppages, turnovers, and originating in the defensive half, forward half, and centre bounce. Your ability to score through any of these 6 ways, and they do overlap, by the way. If you get a turnover in your forward half, you have scored off turnover that originated in your forward half. That goal would go to both of those. Which is more efficient? Well, if we break down the way that teams are scoring in 25, we can somewhat get an answer before we look at the club-by-club breakdown. That is that kick-ins are generating 4.2 points per team, stoppages 34.6, and turnover just a tick under 47. We compare that to 33.5 points in the defensive half, 39.8 points in the forward half, and 12.6 points at centre bounce. So ideally, you put the 2 of them together. If you can generate turnovers in your forward half, you are laughing. And one of the big examples of a team crumbling in this scenario was the Hawthorn versus Richmond game only a couple of weeks ago, whereas in the first half, Richmond generated 18 turnovers in their forward half and scored 1 goal too. That ain't cutting the mustard. But how is every team going across these 6 metrics? Where are their strengths and where are their weaknesses? And should we be worried about them come finals time? This bit is going to get very numbers based, just a heads up. So if you want to just go to your club, the timestamps are in the description. Heads up. The Crows, number 1 for turnover, 1 for defensive half, 5th from centre bounce, 6th from forward half, and 11th from stoppage. That obvious weakness being from stoppage is going to be really interesting because with Matt Crouch there and not there, that is still not great. Definitely below AFL average there, and something that Dawson, Rankin, Saligo, Sam Berry, if he becomes a more prominent part of the midfield for the Crows, as well as others rolling through there, of course, maybe needs to be something they need to get better at. Could Mitch Hinge roll through for some CBAs in order to get some offensive punch going? Who knows? Brisbane don't really have any great strength at the moment, so 5th in forward half, 6th in stoppage and defensive half, 7th in turnovers, but centre bounce 17th. If that doesn't shock you, then look, I'm surprised, because when you've got Neil, McCluggage, Dunkley, the 2 Ashcroft brothers rolling through there, not being able to score from centre bounce is a problem. Could part of that be a forward line that hasn't adjusted post Joe Danaher in a 6 scenario? Potentially. Is it bothering them all that much? Potentially not, because these are metrics that they could definitely get better at. They haven't peaked yet. That's the optimistic way of looking at it. Pessimistically, none of those metrics add up to a team that we would be 100% confident in come September. They do have the runs on the board, though, that I'm definitely not going to be pessimistic about them. Carlton are 7th in the forward half, 9th in stoppage, and effectively mid everywhere else as well. And considering you've got 2 Coleman medalists, and look, a happy and healthy Harry Mackay is definitely benefiting the Blues at the moment. He kicked 3 goals on the weekend and took the absolute PI 55, and his ability to be a target down the line, look, it's not as important as scoring goals as we know, but Carlton as a whole have to get better in all of these areas. And considering that they have already played quite a few of these bottom teams, they are going to have to do this on the run. Can they? Of course, that's going to be the obvious question that they need to answer. But ultimately, it doesn't look great for the Blues. The Pies are 3rd in scoring off turnover, 4th in their forward half, 12th at centre bounce, and 15th at kick-in. Is kick-in going to be all that important with a 4.2 average points? Not particularly, but hey, it's part of the metric, so we will counter in this regard. Again, centre bounce is going to be something that we're going to look at a little bit later on in the video and determine whether we should be worried about this or not. Their centre bounce makeup makes a little bit more sense that they're struggling to score from it. Yes, Pendlebury is playing as well as he is at 53. I know he's not 53, but just let me have this joke, all right? And of course, Nick Dacos is there, can't do it on his own. Ned Long is there to halve the contest. That makes a little bit of sense, but the fact that every time they're getting the ball forward, whether it is off the opposition or by themselves, they're generating that into scores makes perfect sense. Look at how often they were able to kill Freo on turnover over at Optus Stadium off a 5-day break. That explains those numbers pretty easily. And Essendon are not top 9 in anything. They are 11th at turnover, 11th in the forward half, 12th in defensive half, 12th at stoppage, 13th at centre bounce, and 18th at kick-in. Considering that they have a percentage that's around 91 at the moment, even though they are, I think, 9th or 10th on the ladder, is pretty impressive, to be honest, and it's all going to be part of the growth process that takes place at Bomberland or the Hangar. Moving forward is going to be a good thing. Caddy's got to get more experience. Caco's got to get more experience, as we know. Peter Wright just needs to stay in the side. They look much more dangerous, as well as Kyle Langford. And look, they have got a gluttony of good picks that are going to be coming into the side, so I can definitely see why people are jumping on board the Bombers bandwagon. It's definitely something that they're going to need to improve, especially as this season goes on, because they should still be fighting for finals, considering they've got their own first-round pick. They've got Melbourne's as well. They've got the academy kids coming in as well, so there's no real downside to not be playing at their best. Not that I think they'd be doing that anyway, but the fact that they don't have a particular strength in any of those areas might be a little bit of a concern, but if they can improve all of them at the same time, you're killing it. Fremantle are 5th in the defensive half, 6th at kick-ins, 14th at stoppage, and 16th in the forward half. Now, if you know anything about how the Dockers play and why I am angry at them, you will understand that this metric kind of annoys me a little bit, because being able to rebound on transition and generate that into scores is great when it's part of an overall game plan. When it's the only way you score, you've got problems. And considering that they've got a contingency outside of Amos and Tracy, that you've got Michael Frederick, Sam Swikowski, who apparently is a pressure forward, who just isn't putting pressure on, which is not great. As we know, you've got Shea Bolton down there, so being able to generate even stoppages in their forward half is something that they've struggled with all year, and if they're not going to get better at it, well, they can kiss finals goodbye. It's as simple as that. You then go to the Cats, who are 2nd for stoppage, especially inside their forward 50, 3rd from the forward half, 3rd at centre bounce, 4th off turnover, and their weakness is kicking it in at 12th, which again is not going to generate a whole lot of score for you, but you can't be perfect, unfortunately, for Geelong fans. Now, considering that we sort of as a footy fandom, I suppose, have kind of given Geelong a little bit of stick for how weak that midfield supposedly looks, those numbers are not backing that up. The, of course, introduction of Bailey Smith in there. Max Holmes is a full-time mid. He's working perfectly. And Tom Atkins, the most underrated third midfielder in the competition, is absolutely lighting it up. Can you imagine if they got Luke Jackson? Holy Moses. But at this moment, the Cats are humming. Yes, it's not translating to wins and losses. They're 5-4 at the moment. But I am extremely confident that with these kind of numbers against opposition, if they're fully healthy down back, they're going to be fine. Gold Coast, 1st in the forward half, 2nd on turnover, 3rd on kick-in, 5th from stoppage, 7th in the defensive half, and 7th at centre bounce. Yes, those being their weaknesses. Now, there's a couple of factors that equates into this. Number one is obviously their game plan that has to work perfectly, and it is humming right now. The Damien Hardwick fingerprints all over this side is evident, but also, and people are going to be commenting this already, soft draw. They've had the easiest draw in the competition by an absolute mile. They're going to get Hawthorn in Darwin, which is going to be a pretty easy game considering Gunston, Bruce, and Meek look like they're all going to be rested, which sucks in my Supercoach team. But hey, Meeky did not perform for me last week. My goodness me. But overall, again, soft draw. Still got to win. They're doing that and putting forward everything in place for them to be making finals. So shout out to them. GWS, 1st from kick-in, 2nd from the defensive half, forward half 13th, and centre bounce 14th. A little bit like I was talking about with Freo earlier, being able to generate so many scores from half back is all well and good. But again, if you can't do it any other way, and you're going to get inconsistent performances. If Lockie Whitfield and Lockie Ash are getting 70 disposals between them, that's great if you've got them in your Supercoach and your fantasy team. But if your midfielders are doing absolutely stuff all, then you're in trouble. Their biggest 2 games in terms of contributions from stoppage and centre bounce scoring this year, the game against the Cats and the game against Collingwood in opening round. I wonder how they went in those games. I don't know. 2-0? The Hawks are second from kick-in, second from centre bounce, third from stoppage, third from the defensive half, fifth on turnover, and 12th from the forward half, which is actually quite interesting in terms of the Hawks not being able to turn forward half ball into scores. The Hawks, of course, want to play the full field, which again, from the defensive half and kick-in sounds great, but the fact that they're a bit more multi-dimensional than the Giants because they are able to generate it in another way. Clearly, the forward half is going to be the point of improvement, but overall, those numbers from the Hawks, you have no right to complain, and I am definitely not complaining about those numbers at all. Yes, the Hawks have had a pretty soft 3 weeks in terms of opposition, but did you see who they've played before that? 7-2 for the first time since 2013, yes? Please. Melbourne are 8th at centre bounce and basically poo at everything else. Forward half 14th, 15th at turnover, 16th at stoppage, and 18th in their defensive half. The Ds can't score. It's as simple as that. Whether it's inaccuracy, whether it's just an inability to get the ball forward, it's the fact they've got 2 pretty young key forwards. It's the fact that they've got not a lot of small targets outside of Cozzy. Bailey Fritsch is just not playing good footy at the moment. I like Spargo and Sparrow, but they're not your traditional small forwards, especially Sparrow is more of your hybrid player. Melbourne are not good, and they're not good mainly because they can't score. It's as simple as that. North Melbourne are 4th at stoppage, 4th from centre bounce, 10th at kick-in, 10th from forward half, but 17th on turnover. North's inability to transition the ball quickly is a problem. Their structure, both forward of centre and back of centre, when the ball gets turned over, whether it's their turnover or whether it's someone else's, is what's holding this footy club back. The fact that you've got an overloaded midfield that is able to generate scores is actually awesome. Now, the fact they didn't take advantage of this against Brisbane down at Ninja Stadium, I think it's called now, which is weird, but anyway, is not discouraging. It's just annoying, the fact that they're not going to be able to get these scores from that dominance at clearance. That third quarter, they took the piss against that Brisbane midfield and generated barely any score from it compared to that dominance. I think they had 8 of the first 10 clearances. They kicked 2 goals, 1 from it. Now, plus 7 in clearance and 2 goals, 1 is still pretty good, but 3 scores from 7 clearances, you'd want a little bit more for that, especially considering the quality of Nick Larkey down there. And I hate to say it, but North probably have 2 more wins on the board if Paul Curtis was playing. Sorry. Port Adelaide are 6th at centre bounce, 8th in their forward half, and pretty middling in terms of everywhere else. And that's both good and bad. Port were really good against the Crows. They look like they're 2 weapons short up forward and 2 weapons short down back, which is a bit of a problem. I don't necessarily agree with that they need to rebuild. They probably can't, considering they don't have their first round pick this year. So that's a little bit of a problem. But I think it's as simple as they still need some small forward targets. Joe Berry's going to be a very good player, I understand that, and they've got small forwards on their list that just aren't good enough to be in the ones right now. They're about middle of the pack. The scoring analytics suggest that as well. Richmond are bottom 6 in every metric, so we don't really need to cover it. We kind of understand why, because of the rebuild. Nothing really more to say here. If they beat North Melbourne on the weekend, though, look out. St. Kilda are 7th at stoppage. They're 14th on turnover and 16th from kick-in. I've always said, and I'll preach it again, that St. Kilda need to sacrifice defense for offense. They have done that for the majority of the season. I've really liked the way that St. Kilda have played their footy this year. They should have beaten Carlton. They didn't. They're not the finished product yet. I agree with Ross in terms of their 4th and 5th midfield options. Potentially not there yet. It's getting that week-to-week consistency, which is key. I'm not ready to stick the boots into St. Kilda, though, to be perfectly honest. Even though these numbers are suggesting a footy club that's nowhere near there, this is a hell of a lot better than we've seen in the past. And it's kind of bothering me when St. Kilda fans on Twitter are like, well, would you rather us play ugly and be in games or play open footy and lose by 50? If you play open, fast-paced footy, you're not going to lose by 8.5 goals. Not with how young your ball movers are. So stop saying that. Sydney are 4th in the defensive half, 6th on turnover, 15th at stoppage, 15th at forward half, and 16th at centre bounce. They stink when it's 6 on 6, and we know why. The injuries are why, both midfield and up forward. And what are they going to be able to do with Dean Cox's game plan? Well, their ball movement and transition game are looking pretty good, but when the going gets tough, they don't, and that's a problem. West Coast are bottom 2 in everything but kick-ins, and shout out to West Coast's James Sicily, who is Ryan Marich, who someone said that he would be that. He is that. At his age. He's not James Sicily, all-Australian prime form. That's not what I'm saying when I say that, right? But we know why, again, West Coast are bad up forward. They're just going to need to keep increasing these metrics and getting better week on week, which they are on the field. Fingers crossed they get their first win soon. Nothing really else to say here, to be honest. And the Bulldogs, first at centre bounce, first at stoppage, second from the forward half, fifth from kick-in, but on turnover, they're 14th. Massive shout-out for the second from forward half, considering no Darcy. I know he played earlier on in the season, but no Jamara, no Cody Waitman, and they're still able to lock the ball into their forward half. Their midfielders are kicking goals. Bont, Richards, they are still able to get generative play from Riley West, McNeil, and these kind of guys that are moving forward. They are going to be able to get Bont and Treloar more forward time once they're playing together with continuity. They're in such a good place at the moment. That 14th from turnover is really interesting, but it's kind of, again, explainable because of the way that they are playing and the structure that they are setting up. When it is Aaron Norton and Rory Lobb, being able to move the ball quickly to those guys might be a little bit harder. Yes, that's a number they will look to improve, but considering how well they're playing footy at the moment, they're in really good shape. They really are. So in terms of where your club is at, there's the breakdown there, but how does this equate to what we can expect come later on in the season? Well, obviously, in order for you to score, you're going to have to generate inside 50s. Not too many goals are being generated from a non-inside 50 position. Yes, something like a center clearance or a turnover that is getting a run, or a goal, I should say, from a run that ends up at about 52, 54 meters out. That all makes sense, I understand that, but scoring shots per inside 50 is going to be something that is needing to be generated. All 8 of the top 8 teams make up the top 8 for scoring shots per inside 50, so we can kind of just wipe that away. If you score, you're scoring, and you're winning, you are usually generating territory. We all know that. So how do we break it down in terms of who actually are the best scoring teams in the comp from an efficiency point of view? Well, like anything, you've got to look at how it translates to finals footy. Take Brisbane, for example, 01, 02, 03, 04, never finished on top of the ladder. Were they the best team during that half decade? Well, yeah, duh. So what are teams doing that are equating to good finals footy? Well, I went back through the last 2 years of finals, 18 finals, with all 6 of these scoring metrics and figured out what do you have to be good at in order to win finals. So let's go from source and then origin. So from source, in terms of kick-ins, the kick-in debate is 2 wins, 9 losses, and 7 draws for the teams that win the scoring from kick-in battle, with the average margin of -2, which is still kind of hilarious, I'm not going to lie. At stoppage, winning the stoppage scoring battle, you are 10 wins and 8 losses with an average winning margin of +8.4. But on turnover, 16 wins, 2 losses with an average winning margin of +18 points. You need to score off turnover to win finals. It's as simple as that. From your defensive half, you'd be 15-3 with an average winning margin of 11 points. In the forward half, you would be 12-6 with an average of 8 points. And at centre bounce, you are 14-4 with an average winning margin of 4.2 points. What the heck does this mean in terms of teams now? Well, very simply, we just need to look at which teams are dominating in those 3 big areas: turnover, defensive half, and scoring from centre bounce. Because if you're good at those, and you continue to be good at those in finals, you're away. You're ahead of the pack. So which teams are the best at just those 3? How many teams are in the top 6 in the competition at all 3 of those? Well, there they are on the screen: Adelaide, Gold Coast, Collingwood, and Hawthorn. Now, is it fair to say that these are 4 very good teams? Yes, they are. Is it a shock that Brisbane is not there? Absolutely. But Daz, I can hear you thinking, what about your ability to defend? And I agree with you. Kicking 100 points a game sounds great, but if you're conceding 110 points per game, you're in the shit. You'd go winless, right? That's the way that works. So can you score off turnover? Can you score from your defensive half? Can you score from centre bounce, but also defend all of those? So here's my question. Do any teams in the competition rank top 6 for those 3 scoring metrics from a differential point of view? Can you score and can you defend from turnover, defensive half, and centre bounce? Who is doing all 3 of those perfectly? Well, it's Gold Coast and Hawthorn, and that's it. In terms of top 6 in the comp on scoring differentials from those 3 major finals winning stats, it's those 2, and they play on the weekend. And look, Gunston, Bruce, Meek resting. Gold Coast are going to win that game. I'm going to react to that game. I'm not going to overreact to it because they're probably just going to belt the shit out of the Hawks, to be perfectly honest, because the ground, everything to do with what can happen during that game. I hope they don't. I hope the Hawks win, but I'm expecting a Gold Coast by 34-point kind of operation there. But that's really encouraging from a Hawthorn point of view, considering no Lewis, no Deer, so that helps. And of course, the rising form of Jack Gunston has been a big part of that. And when you consider the down form of Dylan Moore and Jack Ginnivan throughout the year, the Hawks are really well placed. And look, I'll concede this. Maybe I have been too harsh on them. And Gold Coast are taking the soft draw and dominating it. They are still going to have to play good teams and beat them in order to play finals. But at this point in time, if you're a Gold Coast, Adelaide, Collingwood, or Hawthorn fan, you're feeling really good. And there are about half a dozen teams as well that are in 2 out of those 3, Brisbane, Collingwood, the Western Bulldogs, Geelong, the other good teams that you expect. But right now, we really have to put a lot of respect on the way that Gold Coast, Adelaide, Hawthorn, and Collingwood are going about their business from both ends of the ground. Defense wins premierships. You still got to score, though. It's the way it works. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of breakdown, guys. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy cohort family. All of those fantastic things. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. The Hawthorn Round 10 review against Gold Coast will be coming probably 2 hours after the siren, because that's kind of how we operate here at Daz HQ. I'm a one-man show, guys. I can't do it all that quickly. But I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you sticking around. I will see you for a massive Round 10. Goodbye.